Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Sterling, editor of Body Dialogue, the newsletter for Shintaido of America. Today, we're recording the first of what I hope will be a series of conversations with Shintaido instructors and practitioners. We want to learn more about each other's Shintaido experience, as well as get to know a bit about the personal and professional life of members of our community. Today, I want to welcome Connie Borden. Connie has been teaching and practicing Shintaido since 1984. She is a general instructor, the president of Shintaido of America, the chairperson of the Shintaido International Technical Examination Committee, also known as ITEC. I'm sure many of you have studied with her, attended workshops she has organized, or been in meetings that she has led. Connie's professional life as an RN and nurse practitioner has given her many opportunities. She has spent the last 27 years focusing on hospice and palliative care, counseling patients and their families who are dealing with serious illness and at times the end of their lives. Connie lives in San Francisco, California. She's married to Mike Sheets, a senior instructor of Shintaido and a registered veterinary tech at the University of California. She has a son, Robert, who is a doctor of chiropractic, and a daughter, Elizabeth, who works as a marine science teacher and oceanographer. We are really looking forward to hearing more from Connie to learn more about how Shintaido and her professional life connect. Hi, Connie, and
Hi, Jim.
Thank you for agreeing to join me in our first Shintaido conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jim.
So let's start with my first question. So you've been practicing, teaching, and leading Shintaido classes and organizations for quite a long time. Please let us know a little bit more about your Shintaido background.
So as you mentioned, I started in 1984. To my credit, I guess I am the first and only person who's been recruited through the Cherry Blossom Festival. That's an event that's held in Japan during 2 weeks over the cherry blossom time, when many different organizations present martial arts or dance or various other Japanese related activities. And I saw Jim and Ben Shearson, Kazuo Shibao, Ito Sensei doing bow, and was very impressed with what I saw with the bow. Had never seen anyone doing those type of bow techniques. So I took the little flyer and called the phone number. And once we connected, I started the practice with Shintaido.
Could you tell us a bit about your experience with palliative care? When and where did you begin working in this profession?
Sure. I had been working as an adult nurse practitioner at the University of California, San Francisco on Parnassus. And after Robert was born, I was then looking at a career change, many things changing in healthcare, including my life. So looked and interviewed at an organization that's called Hospice by the Bay. What I was struck by was the care of the total person that hospice would provide. So mind, body, spirit, which has always appealed to me since my early nursing education days. And hospice was really able to live that. So for me, the connection not only was a professional growth where I could learn more about nursing and healthcare, have more experience working with boards, fundraising, but for myself as a full person, then I was able to also bring the Shintaido and that spiritual connection that Shintaido provided into my workplace, where it was okay to talk about spirituality and the spirit and that part of one's life.
Great. What do you enjoy most about the work, and what do you find the most challenging?
I enjoy the people. I think that's a common thread for me throughout all. So definitely enjoy the people, the families. I feel very honored that I am being asked to participate in their healthcare and their healthcare decisions at a very vulnerable time. This is usually when a serious diagnosis has been given, or another stage in the illness is progressing and some transitions are being planned. So I feel very honored that they let me in, and they let me in so fully during this time. So I appreciate that very much. Each family comes with their own needs and wants. our healthcare system, unfortunately, is fragmented, so it's not a healthcare system. So it can be frustrating at times to hear of many unmet needs that they might have and know that there's not perhaps a way to help take care of that. For example, there is no money to help families pay for burials. So that is a given fact at the moment, and that's an area that sometimes can feel frustrating if you really want to try to be helping people and know that financially this is an issue for them.
Mhm. So that's one of the challenges that you face.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about the connections that you find specifically between Shintaido and your work in palliative care?
Yeah. So yes, I think there's three areas. I mentioned a little bit about the spirituality. Um, the more I practice Shintaido, the more I'm aware of that connection with the inner part of yourself that you call your spirit, and the interconnection to others through that piece. So having that connection of spirituality and Shintaido and knowing that that's an important part for people who are seriously ill, however they define their spirituality, is a part that I find very helpful. I've always enjoyed Shintaido because it took me outside, took me literally outside to nature. So we would go to Ocean Beach, we would go to the redwood trees, we would be in Golden Gate Park. Often I would be going to places that perhaps I would never have gone without Shintaido having an event there. So I connected deeply with nature, and I found that was another place where there was overlap with big nature. And I think the last has to do more with some recent pieces that we worked on. Bereavement has always been part of my reason for doing palliative care. Individual patients, absolutely, certainly they have needs to make sure their symptoms are addressed. But it's often the family and loved ones, the caregivers surrounding them, that need so much more of the support. And they're going through grief. They're going through grief with the knowledge of what's coming, and they go through the grief after someone's died. And so when we've been studying Tenshin Goso, our 5-part body movement with vocalization, and Ito Sensei has taught us Kotodama, which is a different portion of that vocalization. It really speaks to that ability to express our grief, release it, perhaps commune with the people that have gone before us. But I found that that Kotodama, both the sounding that we make and the vibrations it brings to our body, is a great way to release that grief. And actually I've taught it when I went to Europe to a global conference on end of life. And that Kotodama piece definitely resonated with the other 25 people in the room with me at that time.
Great. What have you learned from your patients or colleagues that has contributed to your teaching or practice of Shintaido?
I think the most important piece that I've learned is to listen to in between the words. So often something may be said, but it's either what doesn't get said or what's said in the pause, sort of like music, what's in between the beat is really where the issues lie. So being able to attune, listen that carefully so that I can really hear what the issue is and attempt to bring it out so that we're talking about what's really the issue and letting that truth shine forward. Often that's the case. I do that often with the Asian American families because I acknowledge that culturally we may be very different. As a white Caucasian woman, I talk about death and dying. This perhaps is more common in my culture. And so I acknowledge to the Asian American families that I meet with that this is not often a common thing that's happened in their family, in their culture. Often speaking about death is a taboo. So I sometimes will bring it right up front that we need to be talking about that. And then they're actually very grateful that someone outside their family, outside their community will talk about a topic that often isn't given room to talk about. So trying to listen to what isn't being said, but what really needs to be talked about.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand you've taught a number of workshops for caregivers where you introduce Shintaido movement. You mentioned Kotodama, and what other kinds of movements have you taught? And if you could share any of the feedback that you got from the participants.
So that same global conference, the first year I taught Tenshin Goso as the cycle of life. And again, the feedback was, it's wonderful to move our bodies. They were in a conference that was mostly people talking, reading papers. So to get up and move your body was appreciated. The 5 sounds with attention goso was appreciated. And interesting, we often take our body movements for so granted, and the fact that we were raising our arms, perhaps overhead, showing some vulnerability by showing our underarms. Some people commented on feeling so vulnerable by doing these movements where they more would have held themselves perhaps closed or shut off. So that was very interesting. We also were very fortunate that the Henry Kaiser Family Foundation, when I was at Hospice by the Bay, funded 8 or 9 sessions with Ito Sensei. And that was a great learning opportunity to provide care to caregivers. We did Tenshin Goso, we did Eiko Dai, we did Taimyo, we did Wakame. And I think, again, what we learned from them was the importance to step out of what was their daily life, what their daily worries were, to rest almost from having to think about those and focus on body movement. So by moving your body, you're not thinking about your worries. So they found that very restful to get away from their daily activities. And then, of course, we're very lucky to be out in the Marin Headlands. So again, a beautiful beach, beautiful ocean, wonderful food, the whole setting, along with the teaching, they very much appreciated. And many people came to several of the different caregiver workshops because it gave them that reprieve that we were exactly trying to offer for them.
Wonderful. So for a number of years, you've been very closely working with Ito Sensei, and he's been with you, as you mentioned, at the caregiver workshops and recently other places around the world, actually. And you've been hosting him in San Francisco and his classes there. Is there anything specifically or special that stands out about your experience with him?
Having known him for many years, and you've actually known him almost 10 years longer than I think the thing that he says about himself, so I'm not speaking anything that he hasn't said, is that his own teaching has evolved so greatly. And through his own experiences with illness, he's able to definitely relate to the people in the room. So he can take now his own experiences with illness and how his body responded and change the teaching so that bodies can be kept soft and supple and move well, and you can feel healthy within the limitations perhaps of what physically is a problem. So it's been remarkable to watch someone's teaching change and incorporate so many more facets with body movement. The other one that's come up is the people in the room have said that they appreciate being in a community, which is often maybe 10 or 12 people, perhaps a bit more, and that is a rare experience in their lives, to be in a community where they feel safe, where they can express themselves, where they feel supported. So I think that's the other part that Shintaido provides is, we call it the dojo, the safe space, where a person can step in, again, leave whatever's happening behind, and know that they're safe in terms of doing their movements, doing their expression, so that they can change and grow. So I think that's the other piece that I think I learned with Ito.
Great. So you've mentioned briefly a couple of stories about Shintaido, like the Cherry Blossom Festival and working with Ito Sensei. Do you have any other favorite stories? Any memories that you have that keep coming back in your dreams or something like that?
Yeah, I know stories are always something that draw people in. It's interesting when you asked me that question, I thought, I don't know if I have stories. I have like these flashes of images that happen. So it's more like, I remembered this piece of something. So sorry?
It's kind of like a collage.
It's like a collage, yes. So some are humorous. Like one year I was in charge, probably working with others, organizing our winter study. We call it Kangeiko. It means cold weather study. San Francisco really doesn't get cold, but we were preparing in January that it was going to be cold and rainy. And I told everyone, we will be outside no matter what, whether it's raining or not, just be prepared. The entire workshop will be outside. So everyone was prepared. They had their warm coats, their warm jackets. that weekend. It was like 70 degrees. People are peeling off their heavy jackets, just being in t-shirts, sweatshirts. And the other thing that struck me was, with it being that warm, the wind was coming from on the shore out to the ocean. That's the opposite way it flows. So when we were on the beach, I was actually remarkably quiet, although I wasn't aware of it until the afternoon. And then the wind shifted and came back from the ocean to the land and brought with it the sounds of the water crashing on the beach. So that's one sort of funny image I had is someone organizing, having one set of expectations, and then all that completely being changed and with an entirely different experience for others. So that's one image that comes to mind.
I think I remember people out sunbathing on the
Yeah, and then we always have
around.
people who want to go swimming in the ocean, even at Ocean Beach with its rip tides and rip currents.
Yeah.
People do. Yeah.
Right. Very fond.
Yeah, I think a lot of the memories do revolve around the nature, which I think is so unique. So there was a keiko we had where we were doing the long staff, our long 6-foot staff bow, and we were in the water at the edge, and the tide was coming in and going out, and that going out feeling, how it feels on your feet and toes as the sand is moving away from the shore, and you're now raising your 6-foot staffs directly overhead and feeling that whole sensation of what you're standing on is just being swept away to out into the ocean. So that was another one I remember. I think you were teaching that one, Jim. I remember the other kongeikos we'd have. We would again be out there early in the morning with our sword this time, standing further back up on the bluff, and having the police come to find out why we were standing on the bluff of the beach. And that was when I remember that you went out and you talked to the police officers about why we were there, what we were doing.
Yeah, I remember that. They said, "Put down your weapon." My book fell in my hand, and I did.
Our wooden swords. And then, we've just been so lucky. We've gone places with the redwood trees. They're magnificent. Have done some non-directly Shintaido events, again with Ito up to Bristol Cone Pines, visiting these century-old trees. And that was just another completely different feeling. So nature, the ocean, trees, beach, wind, sun, all of those come back as snippets of images where we're practicing on the East Coast, incredibly hot. And yet we're supposed to be standing meditating. I remember Aoki Sensei was telling us, don't blush, don't knock off the mosquitoes. Just let them have the moment. They just need to feed a little blood for a moment and you'll be fine. But the rest of us are trying to get rid of the mosquitoes that were landing on us. So I don't know, those are the moments that come up that are flashes in my brain of things that happened.
Great. That's all I have today. Was there anything else you wanted to add or conclude with?
No, thank you, Jim. It's quite interesting to sit and reflect back. For me, it's as much reflecting back and remembering some of the images. Since I have so many hats I wear currently, a lot of what I'm trying to work on is now, because I really do want Shintaido to be open to many more people. So we, finished looking at how can we talk about Shintaido. So the expression of opening to life resonates with me, because I really do want us to open our Shintaido practice so that more people can participate now, today, and then carry it into the future. So stories are wonderful remembrances. Let's pay attention to here and now and also be ready for the future.
Thank you very much. You're keeping Shintaido alive.